The massive space station called Concordia floated in the dark between the stars. It was bigger than most cities, with silver walls that caught the light from distant suns. Ships from 12 different worlds docked at its many ports. This was where the Galactic Alliance met to make decisions that affected billions of lives across the galaxy. Ambassador Henwu walked slowly through the long corridors toward the main meeting room. His dark suit was simple and clean, nothing fancy like what the other species wore. Behind him, 2 other humans followed. Somin carried a small datapad and walked with the straight back of someone who had been a soldier. Taeho looked around at everything with curious eyes, like he was still amazed to be here among the stars. They had been coming to these meetings for 50 years now, ever since Earth joined the Alliance. 50 years of sitting at the big round table and listening to the older species talk about important things. 50 years of saying, "Yes, sir," and whatever you think is best, to creatures who look down on humans. The meeting room was huge, with a dome ceiling that showed the stars. Outside, 12 chairs sat around a circular table, each one made for a different kind of body. Some species needed water tanks. Others required special gases to breathe. The humans just needed regular chairs and normal air, which many of the others thought was boring. Hyunwoo took his seat between 2 much larger beings. On his left sat Vexthor, who looked like a cross between a lion and a shark. The Krathri were warriors who loved to fight and thought peace was for weaklings. Their fur was dark red and their teeth were always showing. Vexthor wore armor even to peaceful meetings, as if he expected a battle to break out at any moment. On Hyunwoo's right was Zilprima, a tall being made of what looked like living crystal. The Valens were the smartest species in the Alliance, or at least they thought they were. Their technology was far ahead of everyone else's, and they never let anyone forget it. Zilprima's crystal body changed colors when she was thinking, which was most of the time. "The meeting will begin," announced the Alliance chairman, a floating jellyfish-like creature from the oldest member world. "Today we must discuss the mining rights in the outer systems." Henwu listened as the other species argued about who should get the best mining planets. The Krathri wanted worlds with metals for making weapons. The Valens wanted rare crystals for their computers. Other species had their own needs and wants. Everyone spoke loudly and demanded the best deals for themselves. When it was Earth's turn to speak, Henwu stood up slowly. The room got quiet, but not because they respected him. It was more like when adults stop talking because a child has something to say. "Earth would be happy with whatever mining rights are left over," Hyunwoo said in his calm voice. "We don't want to cause any problems for our friends in the Alliance." Vexthor laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "The humans are so weak," he said to the others. "They take whatever scraps we throw them and say, 'Thank you.'" Zilprima's crystal body turned a shade of blue that meant she was amused. "It's almost sweet how humble they are, like pets who are grateful for any attention." The other species made sounds that might have been laughter. Hanwoo just smiled and sat back down. Somin's hand moved slightly toward her belt, but she stopped herself. Taeho wrote something on his datapad and showed it to no one. The meeting went on for hours. Every time there was a choice between what was good for Earth and what was good for someone else, Hyunwoo chose to help the others. When the Krathri wanted a planet that Earth had found first, Hyunwoo gave it to them. When the Valens needed resources for a new project, Earth offered to provide them for free. "You are too kind," said the chairman when the meeting was ending. "Earth is such a generous member of our alliance." Other species nodded and made agreeing sounds, but Hyunwoo could see in their eyes what they really thought. They thought humans were weak. They thought Earth was a poor little world that needed their protection. They thought the human military was small and their technology was simple. This was exactly what Hyunwoo wanted them to think. After the meeting, the 3 humans walked back to their ship. It was smaller than most of the other vessels in the docking bay, with a simple design that looked old-fashioned compared to the sleek ships of the other species. Once they were inside and the doors were closed, Somin finally spoke. "I wanted to punch Vexthor right in his ugly face." "I know," said Hyunwoo, "but we have to keep playing our part." Tejo was already working at a computer terminal. I recorded everything they said about their fleet sizes and weapon types. Earth Command will be very interested in this information. Somin sat down heavily in her chair. How much longer do we have to pretend to be weak? Hyanwu looked out the window at the other ships. Some of them carried enough firepower to destroy moons. Their crews thought they were the strongest beings in the galaxy. They had no idea what was really hidden in human space. As long as it takes, he said. The peaceful facade protocol is working perfectly. They trust us because they think we're harmless. They tell us their secrets because they think we're too simple to understand them. They let us into their meetings because they think we're grateful just to be included. And while they think that, Tejo added, we learn everything about them, their weaknesses, their fears, their technology. Knowledge is power, and we're gathering more of it every day. Somin nodded, but she still looked frustrated. I just, hope we don't have to wait much longer to show them what humans can really do. Hyanwu smiled, but it was not the gentle smile he wore in the meetings. This smile was sharper, more dangerous. Be patient, Somin. The day will come when the Alliance sees our true strength. But until then, we keep being the nice, weak humans they expect us to be. The ship undocked from Concordia Station and turned toward Earth. As they flew through space, they passed merchant vessels from a dozen different worlds. All of them ignored the small human ship. None of them suspected that inside this unremarkable vessel were three people who knew secrets that could change the galaxy forever. Back on Concordia, the other Alliance members were already forgetting about the humans. They had more important things to think about than Earth's small problems. They never noticed that in every meeting, the humans asked just the right questions to learn about military strengths and defensive plans. They never wondered why humans always volunteered to help with dangerous missions in unexplored space. They never thought it was strange that Earth wanted to build colonies in places that seemed strategically unimportant. For 50 years, humanity had been playing a careful game. They acted weak while they grew strong. They acted simple while they learned everything. They acted grateful while they prepared for something the Alliance could not imagine. And every day, they got better at pretending to be something they were not. The emergency alarm on Concordia Station sounded like a dying wail. Red lights flashed in every corridor as beings from 12 different worlds rushed toward the main meeting room. Something terrible had happened, and everyone knew it without being told. Hyun-woo arrived at the meeting room to find chaos. Species that normally sat with dignity were standing and shouting at each other. Vexthor was roaring something in his own language while his claws scraped the metal table. Zoprima's crystal body was flashing between red and orange, colors that meant fear and anger. What's happening? Hyun-woo asked Somin quietly. They found something in the outer rim, she whispered back. Something old and dangerous. The chairman finally got everyone to sit down and be quiet. His jellyfish body was darker than usual, which meant he was very worried. We have received reports from our exploration ships near the galactic edge, he said. What they found is disturbing. A large screen appeared in the air above the table. It showed pictures that made everyone in the room go silent. There were massive structures floating in deep space, bigger than planets. They looked like they were made of metal and bone mixed together, with surfaces that seemed to move and breathe. These structures appeared 3 days ago, the chairman continued. Our ships detected them coming from outside our galaxy. They are moving toward Alliance space. Dr. Kethmore, the Alliance's chief scientist, stood up. He looked like a tall bird with 4 arms and feathers that changed color with his mood. Right now, those feathers were pure white, which meant terror. We have studied the ancient records, Kethmore said, his voice shaking. These structures match descriptions from 2 million years ago. They belong to a species we call the Devourers. The room went completely quiet. Even Vexthor stopped making noise. The Devourers, Kethmore continued, were the reason the last galactic civilization fell. They consume everything in their path. Planets, stars, entire solar systems. They use the matter to grow larger and create more of themselves. Zilprima's crystal body turned deep purple. The old records say they disappeared suddenly. We thought they were extinct. Apparently they were just sleeping, said the chairman, and now they are awake. The screen showed more pictures. The strange structures were definitely moving toward Alliance space. Even from far away, the ships that took these pictures could detect massive energy readings. Whatever these things were, they had power beyond anything the Alliance had ever seen. How long do we have? Asked General Rax 5 from the warrior moon of Beltos. At their current speed, they will reach the outer systems in 6 months, Kethmore sighed. After that, the core worlds in 2 years. Panic filled the room again. Representatives started talking all at once about evacuation plans and surrender options. Some species wanted to run away to distant galaxies. Others wanted to hide on their homeworlds and hope the Devourers would not find them. What about fighting them? Vexthor demanded. The Cretheri do not run from battle. With what? General. Rax 5 shot back. The old records say the Devourers destroyed fleets of millions of ships. Our entire Alliance Navy has maybe 50,000 vessels. We have the best technology in the galaxy, Zilprima said, but her voice sounded uncertain. So, did the last civilization? Kethmore replied sadly. It didn't help them. Han Wu had been quiet during all this discussion. Now he stood up slowly and the room turned toward him. Everyone expected him to suggest that Earth could provide refugee camps or offer to share their food supplies. That was the kind of thing humans usually did. What can Earth contribute to our defense? The chairman asked. Han Wu thought for a moment. We will do whatever we can to help our friends in the Alliance. Perhaps 500 ships and some support? Vessels. Our technology may not be as advanced as others, but we will stand with you. Several beings made sounds that might have been appreciation, but Han Wu could see the look in their eyes. 500 ships was nothing against an enemy that had destroyed millions. Human technology was primitive compared to Valen computers or Cratheri weapons. Earth's offer was kind but useless. Every ship helps, the chairman said politely. We are grateful for Earth's support. The meeting continued for hours as each species promised what they could provide. The Cratheri had 12,000 warships, the strongest fleet in the Alliance. The Valens had advanced shields and energy weapons. The Beltosians had experienced soldiers. Other species offered their own special abilities. When everything was added up, the Alliance could field about 47,000 combat ships and maybe 20,000 support vessels. It was the largest military force the galaxy had seen in thousands of years. It was also probably not enough. We need to start preparing immediately, the chairman announced. All military production must be increased. Every able being must be ready to serve. We will send scouts to learn more about these Devourers and try to find their weaknesses. As the meeting ended, the representatives walked slowly back to their ships. The mood was dark. Many of them were already thinking about how to evacuate their most important people and treasures. Hyun-Wu, Somin, and Taeho walked together toward their small ship. They could hear other species talking quietly about hopeless battles and noble last stands. 500 ships, Somin muttered when they were alone. I almost laughed out loud. You did well, Hyun Wu told her. The number was perfect. Large. Enough to seem helpful, small enough to seem insignificant. Taeho was already working on his datapad. I'm sending a message to Earth Command now. Code 7 authorization should get their attention. What's Code 7? Somin asked. It means the peaceful facade protocol is ending, Hyun Wu explained. For 50 years we've been the weak, grateful humans who cause no trouble. But if the Devourers are really coming, it's time for the Alliance to meet the real Earth. Inside their ship, Taeho sent an encrypted message that would take 3 days to reach Earth. The message was short but very important. Ancient enemy returning. 60 billion hostile aliens approaching Alliance space. Devourer-class threat. Confirmed. Requesting immediate implementation of Protocol 7. Begin Phase 1 deployment. While they waited for Earth's response, The three humans continued to play their parts. They attended more emergency meetings where Alliance species argued about defense strategies. They offered to help with refugee planning and supply distribution. They asked innocent questions about fleet positions and weapon capabilities. Everyone still thought of them as the simple, weak humans who were grateful just to be included in important discussions. No one suspected that every piece of information they gathered was being sent back to Earth through secret communication channels. Dr. Kethmore shared ancient records about Devourer technology with anyone who wanted to study them. Hein Wu made sure to request copies in case Earth scientists can contribute something useful. The bird-like scientist was happy to share the data with the harmless humans. General Rax 5 discussed military deployment with other species commanders. He was so focused on the big picture that he didn't notice Teho quietly asking questions about supply lines and communication systems. Vexthor boasted about Krathri battle tactics and ship designs. He enjoyed explaining war to the peaceful humans, not realizing that Somin was memorizing every detail about Alliance military weaknesses. 3 days after the emergency meeting, Han Wu received a message on his personal communicator. It was just 2 words, message received. But those 2 words meant that somewhere in human space, things were starting to move. 50 years of careful preparation was about to pay off. The Alliance had no idea that their weakest member was about to become their strongest protector. The Devourers were coming, and they expected to find the same kind of galaxy they had destroyed before. A galaxy of scattered species who fought each other more than they cooperated. A galaxy where the strongest military forces barely reached 50,000 ships. They had no way of knowing that this time, something new was waiting for them. Something that had been hiding in plain sight, playing weak while growing strong, learning everything while revealing nothing. The Alliance was about to discover that Earth had been playing nice all along. The first attack came without warning. Captain Velstorm was patrolling the outer rim in his Krathri warship when the sensors started screaming. Something massive was moving through space toward the small mining colony on Kepler 7. Something that didn't match any known ship design in the Alliance database. What am I looking at? Velstorm growled at his crew. The sensor operator, a young Krathri named Daxhunt, checked his readings 3 times before answering. Sir, it's huge, bigger than a space station, and it's alive. Through the main viewer, they could see it approaching the planet. The thing looked like a cross between a starship and a giant sea creature. Its surface was dark and wet, covered with what looked like tentacles and breathing holes. Parts of it glowed with sickly green light. Send a warning to the colony, Velstorm ordered. Tell them to evacuate immediately. But it was too late. As they watched in horror, the creature ship opened what might have been a mouth and began to feed. The planet's atmosphere was sucked away first, then chunks of the surface itself. The mining colony and its 50,000 inhabitants disappeared. In minutes. Get us out of here, Velstorm shouted, but the thing had already noticed them. Smaller versions of the creature detached from the main body and came racing toward the Krathri ship. They moved through space like fish swimming through water, impossibly fast and agile. Velstorm's ship had the best weapons the Alliance could build. His crew fired everything they had at the approaching creatures. Energy beams that could cut through mountain-sized asteroids bounced off the creature's skin like raindrops. Missiles that could destroy entire fleets were absorbed and digested. The weapons aren't working, Daxhunt yelled over the sound of alarms. The creatures reached their ship and began to attach themselves to the hull. Metal started to dissolve where they touched it. The ship's armor, which could withstand the heat of a star, began to melt like ice in summer. Storm managed to send one last message before his ship was consumed. This is Captain Velstorm to Alliance Command. The enemy is here. They are not ships. They are alive. They eat everything. Run. Within 6 hours, the message reached Concordia Station. Within 12 hours, similar reports were coming in from a dozen other Outer Rim systems. The Devourers had arrived, and they were nothing like what anyone had expected. Emergency meetings were called every few hours. The Alliance's best military minds studied the reports and tried to understand what they were facing. The news got worse with each update. "They're not just destroying our colonies," General Rax 5 reported to the assembled representatives. "They're learning from them. Each attack is more efficient than the last." Dr. Kethmore had been studying the sensor data from destroyed ships. His feathers were now completely black, a color that meant despair. "The ancient records didn't explain how they truly function," he said. "These creatures don't just consume matter for energy, they consume information. Every ship they destroy, every planet they devour, makes them smarter." Zilprima's crystal body was cycling through colors too fast to follow. "Our weapons are useless against them. They adapt to everything we throw at them. Plasma beams that worked in the first battle are absorbed by the second. Kinetic weapons that damage them once are ignored the next time." "How many do we face?" asked the chairman. "The scouts report at least 60 billion individual creatures," General Rex 5 said quietly. "Each one the size of a battleship, or larger. They move in groups of millions, coordinating their attacks perfectly." The number hung in the air like a death sentence. 60 billion creatures, each one capable of destroying planets. The Alliance's entire military was less than 100,000 ships, and those ships couldn't even hurt the enemy. Species representatives began to panic. Some talked about fleeing to other galaxies. Others suggested hiding in deep space and hoping the devourers would pass by. A few spoke of surrender, though no one knew if the creatures would accept it. "What about our defense plans?" Vexthor demanded. "We have fortified systems. We have the best warriors in the galaxy." "The fortified systems have already fallen," General Rax 5 replied. "The devourers go through our defenses like they're not even there. The outer defense grid lasted 4 hours." Han Wu had been listening to all of this without speaking. Finally, he raised his hand to ask a question. "Has anyone tried biological weapons?" he asked innocently. "Since they're living creatures, perhaps something that affects their biology?" Dr. Kethmore shook his head sadly. "We tried that 3 days ago. They absorbed the biological weapons and became immune to them within hours. They seem to adapt to everything." "What about computer viruses?" Tejo suggested. "If they learn from the ships they capture, maybe we could give them false information." "They don't use technology the way we do," Zilprima explained. "They are the technology. Trying to hack them would be like trying to hack a hurricane." Somin looked confused, which was exactly what everyone expected from a human military officer. "I don't understand. How can they be so strong? Don't they have any weaknesses at all?" "If they do, we haven't found them," General Rax 5 said grimly. "Every strategy we've tried has failed. Every weapon we've used has been useless." The meeting dragged on as more bad news arrived. The Krathari home fleet, 12,000 of the strongest warships in the galaxy, had engaged a group of devourers near the Keth system. Less than 1,000 ships escaped. The creatures had eaten the rest, along with the planets they were defending. "We need to evacuate the core worlds," someone suggested. "Evacuate them where?" Vexthor roared. "These things will follow us anywhere we go." "Maybe we should try to negotiate," another representative said desperately. "With what?" General Rax 5 asked. "We've tried sending messages. They don't respond. They just eat whatever we send them." As the arguments continued, Haiyan Wu quietly excused himself and stepped outside the meeting room. Somin and Tejo followed him into an empty corridor. "How long until Phase 1 is complete?" Haiyan Wu asked softly. So-Min checked her encrypted communicator. 3 more days. "The shipyards are working around the clock, but they need time to finish the preparations. And Phase 2? Ready to begin as soon as we give the word," Tejo confirmed. "Admiral Janae is in position with the advance fleet. They're waiting for your signal." Han Wu nodded and looked back toward the meeting room where the sounds of argument and despair continued. 3 more days of letting them think we're helpless. 3 more days of playing the weak, confused humans who don't understand what's happening. "It's hard to watch," So Min admitted. "These people are terrified, and we could end their fear right now." But if we reveal ourselves too early, we lose the advantage of surprise, Heinwu reminded her. The Devourers are learning from every battle. If they see our true capabilities too soon, they might adapt before we can finish them. What if the alliance breaks before then? Teho asked. Some of these species are already talking about surrender. They won't surrender, Hyungwoo said confidently. They're too proud. They'll fight to the end, even if they think it's hopeless. That pride will buy us the time we need. They returned to the meeting room just as the chairman was announcing the final decision. We will make our stand at the Nexus system, he declared. Every available ship from every member world will gather there for one last battle. If we cannot stop them there, then may the stars remember us. The Nexus system was strategically chosen because it controlled access to the core worlds. It was also, though the Alliance didn't know it, very close to the coordinates where Earth's hidden fleet was waiting. As the meeting ended and representatives rushed back to their home worlds to gather their forces, Hanwoo sent one final encrypted message to Admiral Janae. The pieces are in position. Prepare for Protocol 7 Phase 2. The mask comes off in 72 hours. For 50 years, humanity had been the Alliance's weakest member. For 3 days, they had watched their allies face an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. But the Devourers were about to learn something that the Alliance had never suspected. Earth had been playing nice all along, and when humans stopped playing nice, the galaxy would see what they were really capable of. For a long moment, nobody moved. The Alliance fleet hung in space like fish caught in a net, too shocked to respond. 200,000 human warships surrounded them, each one bristling with weapons that looked decades ahead of anything they had ever seen. The small, humble Earth vessels they had known were still there, but now they were revealed as just the visible tip of an enormous iceberg. General Rax 5 was the first to find his voice. Admiral Jin A. How many ships do you have currently deployed in this system? 200,000 combat vessels and 50,000 support ships. Jin A replied as if she was discussing the weather. Additional fleets are standing by in reserve positions. Additional fleets? Vexthor's voice came over the communications. Chanel, filled with disbelief. How many ships does Earth have? Enough, Janae said simply. All ships, weapons free. Target the Devourer fleet. Show them what humans do when we stop playing nice. The human fleet opened fire. What happened next was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The weapons that emerged from the human ships were not based on energy beams or explosive missiles. Instead, they fired streams of something that looked like liquid metal mixed with lightning. When these strange projectiles hit the Devourer creatures, the results were immediate and devastating. The creatures that had been adapting to Alliance weapons for days suddenly found themselves facing technology they could not understand or counter. Their biomechanical surfaces, which had easily absorbed plasma beams and kinetic rounds, began to dissolve when touched by human weapons. What are those weapons? Dr. Kethmore asked in amazement as he watched Devourer scouts literally melt away. Adaptive nanotechnology, Commander Day 1 explained over an open channel. We've been studying Devourer remains for 50 years. These weapons are specifically designed to counter their biological adaptation systems. But it wasn't just the weapons. The human ships moved with a coordination that the Alliance had never seen before. They acted like a single organism with 200,000 parts. Each ship knowing exactly where every other ship would be at any given moment. Groups of human vessels would suddenly appear in perfect formation around isolated Devourer creatures. They would fire their weapons in precise sequences that prevented the creatures from adapting. Before the enemy could evolve countermeasures, the humans had already switched to different attack patterns. This is impossible, Zilprima said over the communications channel. No species can coordinate this many ships so perfectly. We've had 50 years to practice, Admiral Janae replied. And we've been preparing specifically for this enemy. The Devourers, who had been winning easily just minutes before, suddenly found themselves being systematically destroyed. There 10 million creatures, which had seemed like an overwhelming force, or being picked apart by human tactics they couldn't understand. But the humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to save their allies. Alliance ships that had been surrounded by enemies suddenly found human vessels appearing beside them, providing covering fire and medical assistance. Krathri warships that had lost power were taken under protection by human escorts. Valen cruisers with damaged shields found themselves inside protective formations of human defenders. Human vessel Ajax, this is Krathri Captain Vel9, came a transmission from one of the rescued ships. My engines are dead and I have wounded crew members. Acknowledged, Captain, replied the human ship. We're sending medical teams and repair drones. You're safe now. It was happening all across the battlefield. Humans who had been considered the weakest members of the Alliance were now its strongest protectors. They were not just defeating the enemy. They were making sure that as many of their allies survived as possible. Vexthor, whose entire fleet had been nearly destroyed, found his flagship surrounded by human ships fighting off a massive devourer creature. Why are you helping us? He asked over a private channel. We treated you like weaklings for 50 years. Because you're our friends, came the reply from the human captain. And friends protect each other. The tide of battle had completely turned. The devourers, who had adapted to every weapon the Alliance could throw at them, were helpless against human technology that had been designed specifically to counter their abilities. Creatures that had eaten entire planets were being destroyed by ships they had never imagined could exist, but Admiral Jinne was not satisfied with just winning the battle. She was conducting a symphony of destruction that would end the devourer threat forever. Phase 3, execute, she ordered, from the rear of the human formation. Massive vessels that dwarfed even the largest Alliance ships began to move forward. These were not warships, but something else entirely, massive machines that looked like they could rebuild solar systems. What are those? General Rax 5 asked. System builders, Janae explained. We're not just going to defeat the devourers. We're going to make sure they can never come back. The system builders moved to positions around the edge of the Nexus system and began to work. They created energy fields that prevented any form of biological matter from escaping the system. They set up scanning networks that could detect even the smallest devourer fragment. They built automated defense platforms that would guard this space for thousands of years. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued its methodical destruction of the enemy. Every devourer creature was tracked, targeted, and eliminated. The humans showed no mercy, but they also showed perfect discipline. There was no wild firing or wasted shots. Every weapon discharge had a purpose. How did you know? Dr. Kethmore asked over the communications channel. How did you know exactly what weapons to build, what tactics to use? We've been studying them since we joined the Alliance. Tejo's voice came from one of the human ships. Every piece of ancient data you shared with us, every archaeological report, every historical record. We've been preparing for this day for 50 years. But why didn't you tell us? Zilprima asked. Why did you let us think you were weak? Because we needed to be sure we could trust you, Admiral Jinne replied. And we needed the devourers to underestimate us. They've been watching this galaxy for a long time, learning about our military capabilities. If they had known about our true strength, they would have adapted their strategy. The battle was almost over. Of the 10 million devourer creatures that had entered the Nexus system, fewer than 1,000 remained. These survivors were trapped inside the energy fields created by the system builders, unable to escape or call for help. This is Admiral Jin-A to all remaining devourer entities, she broadcast on all frequencies. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now, and you will be contained rather than destroyed. The devourers did not respond with words. Instead, they launched a final, desperate attack, throwing everything they had at the human fleet. It was a gesture of defiance that lasted exactly 17 seconds before the remaining creatures were vaporized by concentrated human fire. Silence fell over the Nexus system. The battle was over. Status report, Admiral Jinne requested. All devourer entities eliminated, Commander Day 1 reported. Alliance casualties are significant but manageable. Human losses are minimal. And the other Devourer fleets heading toward Alliance space? Intercepted and destroyed by Reserve Fleets 2 through 7, Lieutenant Sujin reported. The threat has been eliminated. The Alliance representatives, still stunned by what they had witnessed, tried to process what had just happened. In less than 4 hours, humanity had revealed itself to be the most powerful military force in galactic history and had single-handedly saved civilization from extinction. Admiral Janae, General Rax 5 said slowly, on behalf of the Alliance, thank you. You're welcome, Janae replied. But understand that Earth has not been weak for the past 50 years. We have been patient. There's a difference. The human fleet began to reorganize, some ships moving to help with rescue operations while others took defensive positions. But everyone could see that the crisis was over. The Devourers were gone and the galaxy was safe. For the first time in 50 years, humanity had shown their true face to the Alliance. And that face was not the weak, grateful species that everyone had expected. It was the face of protectors who had been playing nice all along. 3 weeks after the Battle of Nexus, Concordia Station felt different. The same ships docked at the same ports and the same beings walked through the same corridors. But everything had changed. The humans were no longer the grateful junior members sitting quietly in the back of meetings. Now, when Ambassador Hyanwu walked through the station, other species stepped aside with respect. The emergency reconstruction of the Alliance government was taking place in the main conference room. Representatives from all 12 species sat around the familiar circular table, but the seating arrangement had changed completely. Earth's delegation now occupied the position of honor. With Hyanwu at the head of the table, Admiral Janae sat beside him, her simple uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate clothing worn by other species. Behind them, Somin and Teho held positions as official military and intelligence advisors. The humans who had once been ignored were now the center of attention. The first order of business, announced the chairman, is the formal recognition of Earth's new status within the Alliance. General Rax 5 stood up slowly. His proud warrior species had been humbled by what they had witnessed at Nexus. The Beltosian Military Council wishes to officially acknowledge that we were wrong about humanity's capabilities. We request permission to study under Earth's military advisors. Vexthor, the Krathuri representative who had once mocked human weakness, was even more direct. The Krathuri warrior clans formally apologize for our previous disrespect. We offer our fleets to serve under human command if you will have us. Similar statements came from every species around the table. The Valens wanted to share technology with human scientists. The mining guilds offered their best resources to Earth. Even the proudest and most independent species were asking for humanity's guidance. Hyanwu listened to each statement with the same patient smile he had worn for 50 years. When everyone had finished speaking, he stood up slowly. Friends, he said in the same calm voice that had once been dismissed as weakness, Earth appreciates your words. But we must be clear about something. We did not reveal our strength to dominate the Alliance. We revealed it to protect our friends. He gestured toward the large window that showed the stars beyond. For 50 years we have been learning from all of you. The Krathuri taught us about honor in battle. The Valens showed us new ways of thinking about technology. Every species in this alliance contributed to making humanity stronger. Dr. Kethmore, whose feathers had returned to their normal colors after weeks of stress, raised one of his 4 hands. But why did you hide your true capabilities? Why let us think you were weak? Somin answered this question. Because strength without restraint is just bullying. We needed to know that you could be trusted with the truth about what humans are capable of. And what are humans capable of? Zoprima asked. Her crystal body was cycling through curious blue and green colors. Te-Ho smiled. Would you like the complete list? Because it might take a while. Admiral Janae activated a holographic display that showed the current state of human space. What appeared made several beings gasp in shock. The territory that everyone thought contained a few small human colonies was actually filled with massive industrial complexes, military shipyards, and defensive installations. This is what we've been building for the past 50 years, Janae explained. Not just weapons and ships, but the infrastructure to protect an entire galaxy. We have defense platforms around every major trade route. Our sensor networks monitor all approaches to Alliance space. Our rapid response fleets can reach any threatened system within days. How many ships do you actually have? General Rax 5 asked quietly. Currently active? About 2 million combat vessels, Janae replied casually. With production capacity for 10 million more if needed. The silence that followed was absolute. The Alliance's entire military, which they had thought was impressive, was less than 50,000 ships. Humanity had been hiding a fleet 40 times larger than everything else combined. We've also been developing new colonies in distant galaxies, Teho added. Just in case the Devourers had friends we didn't know about. We now have settlements in 7 different galaxies, all connected by transportation networks that can move entire fleets instantly. Vexthor leaned back in his chair, looking stunned. You've built an empire. A secret empire spanning multiple galaxies. No, Haiyan-Wu corrected gently. We've built a protection network. Every human installation exists to defend our friends and allies. We're not interested in ruling anyone. We're interested in making sure nobody can threaten the people we care about. The chairman's jellyfish body was glowing with what might have been amazement. What happens now? How do we proceed with this new reality? The same way we always have, Haiyan-Wu said. Together. The Alliance will continue to function as it always has, with all species working as equals. The only difference is that Earth will take responsibility for external defense. You're offering to protect all of us, Dr. Kethmore said slowly, without asking for anything in return? We're not offering, Somin corrected. We're already doing it. We've been protecting Alliance space for decades, you just didn't know it. Admiral Janae activated another display that showed recorded images from the past 50 years. Asteroid storms that had mysteriously changed course before hitting inhabited planets. Pirate fleets that had vanished before attacking trade convoys. Dangerous spatial anomalies that had been quietly neutralized. Every time the Alliance faced a threat from outside, human ships were there to handle it, Janae explained. We just made sure you never saw us doing it. Why? Zilprima asked. Why protect us in secret? Because you needed to develop your own strength, Haiyan-Wu answered. If we had revealed ourselves too early, you might have become dependent on human protection. Instead, you built your own military forces, developed your own technologies, created your own solutions to problems. You became stronger because you thought you had to rely on yourselves. Teho nodded in agreement. The Alliance today is much more capable than it was 50 years ago. Every species has grown stronger, smarter, more cooperative. That happened because you were allowed to develop naturally without relying on someone else's strength. And now? General Rax 5 asked. Now you know the truth, Admiral Janae said. Humanity has been your silent guardian for 50 years. But we don't want to be silent anymore. We want to work with you openly, as partners and friends. The conversation continued for hours as the representatives discussed how to rebuild the Alliance with humanity's true role revealed new military. Cooperation agreements were drafted. Technology sharing programs were established. Trade deals were renegotiated on terms that were actually fair to Earth, but the most important change was in how the species viewed each other. The humans were no longer seen as weak junior members. But more importantly, they were not seen as conquering overlords either. They were protectors who had chosen to hide their strength until their friends needed help. As the meeting ended and representatives prepared to return to their homeworlds, Vexthor approached Haiyan-Wu privately. I owe you an apology, the Crothery warrior said. For 50 years I thought humans were cowards. I was wrong. No, you weren't, Haiyan-Wu replied with a smile. We were cowards. We were too afraid to show you who we really were because we were scared you might not like us anymore? Vexthor's toothy grin showed his amusement. And now that we know? Now we'll find out, Haiyan said. But I think it's going to be fine. 6 months later, the first joint Human Alliance military exercise took place in the Nexus system. Ships from all 12 species worked together under human coordination to practice defending against threats that might never come. But the real purpose was not military training. It was trust building. Humans who had hidden their capabilities for 50 years were now teaching their former techniques to their allies. Species that had once looked down on Earth were now eager students. The Alliance was becoming something new, not a collection of separate governments working together when convenient, but a true family of species united by friendship and mutual protection. The galaxy was safer than it had ever been. Human fleets patrolled the dark spaces between stars, watching for threats that might emerge from unknown regions. Human scientists worked with Alliance researchers to develop new technologies for peaceful purposes. Human diplomats helped resolve conflicts between species before they could escalate into wars, but perhaps most importantly, the galaxy now knew something that the Devourers had learned too late. Humanity was not a species that fought because they enjoyed violence. They were a species that fought when fighting was necessary to protect the people they loved, and when humans stopped playing nice, there was nothing in the universe that could stand against them. The Alliance had spent 50 years thinking that Earth was their weakest member. They had been wrong. Earth was their strongest protector and always had been. The only difference was that now everybody knew it. In the end, that made all the difference in the galaxy. The Nexus system had never seen so many ships in one place. Vessels from 12 different worlds filled the space around the system's 3 planets. Crathery warships with their dark red hulls and massive guns. Valen cruisers that looked like floating crystals crackling with energy. Beltosian carriers launching fighters that moved like metal birds. Ships from every corner of Alliance space had come here for what everyone knew would be the final battle. Admiral Janae floated in the command center of her flagship, watching the Alliance fleet form up through the main viewer. To everyone else, she looked like she was commanding just another small group of human ships. Her vessel appeared to be a simple transport with basic weapons and minimal armor, but Janae knew what was really hidden in the darkness around the Nexus system. She knew about the ships that weren't showing up on anyone's sensors. She knew about technology that the Alliance had never seen, and she knew that in a few hours everything would change. "Status report," she said quietly to her bridge crew. "All Ghost Fleet units report ready," replied Commander Day 1 from the tactical station. 200,000 vessels holding position in stealth mode. "Weapon platforms are charged and locked on target," added Lieutenant Sujin from Weapons Control. "All systems show green across the board." "Communications are standing by," reported Ensign Minho. "We can tap into Alliance frequencies whenever you give the order." Janae nodded and opened a channel to the Alliance command ship. "This is Captain Janae of the Earth vessel Harmony, requesting permission to join the defensive formation." The reply came from General Rax 5 himself. "Permission granted, Captain. Take position in Grid 7 with the other support vessels." Grid 7 was at the back of the formation, where the Alliance kept their supply ships and medical vessels. It was exactly where everyone expected the weak human ships to be placed, acknowledged General. "Earth stands with the Alliance." As the small group of visible human ships moved into position, Janae could see the other Alliance commanders preparing for battle. They had arranged their forces in a traditional defensive formation that had worked against conventional enemies for thousands of years. Heavy warships in front, support vessels in back, fighters spread out to provide coverage. It was a good formation for fighting other space fleets. It was completely wrong for fighting Devourers. "Admiral," Commander Day 1 said softly, "long-range sensors are detecting the enemy. They'll be here in 2 hours." "How many?" Janae asked. "Approximately 10 million creatures organized in 3 main groups. Each group is larger than our entire visible fleet." Janae did the math in her head. The Alliance had managed to gather 47,000 combat ships for this battle. They were about to face 10 million enemies, each one capable of eating planets. Even with humanity's hidden fleet, the odds were not good, but humans had been preparing for this fight for 50 years. They had studied every piece of ancient data about the Devourers. They had developed weapons specifically designed to kill, creatures that adapted to everything. And they had one advantage that no previous civilization had possessed. They had been underestimated. The first Devourer scouts appeared at the edge of the system 2 hours later. They looked exactly like the REPORTS had described, massive biomechanical creatures that move through space like swimming fish. Their dark surfaces rippled with organic technology that seemed part machine and part living tissue. "All ships prepare for battle," General Rax 5 broadcast to the fleet. "Remember, we're not just fighting for our worlds. We're fighting for the future of all intelligent life in this galaxy." The Alliance ships powered up their weapons and raised their shields. Fighters launched from carriers and spread out in attack formations. Energy readings spiked as every vessel prepared to give everything they had. The Devourer scouts moved closer, and the Alliance opened fire. Thousands of energy beams lanced out across space. Missiles streaked toward their targets, trailing fire. The combined firepower of 47,000 warships lit up the darkness like a miniature star. For a moment, it looked like the weapons were working. Several Devourer scouts were hit and seemed to stagger. But then their surfaces began to shift and change. The energy beams that had damaged them were suddenly absorbed and redirected. The missiles that had hurt them were caught and digested. "They're adapting," Dr. Kethmore reported from the science vessel. "Just like before. They're learning to counter our weapons in real time." The scouts began to fight back. Streams of acid shot out from their bodies, dissolving Alliance ships in seconds. Biomechanical tentacles reached out across impossible distances to grab and crush smaller vessels. Clouds of organic nanites swarmed over the larger ships, eating through their hulls like metal-consuming bacteria. "Fall back to secondary positions," General Rax 5 ordered. But it was too late. The main Devourer fleet had arrived. 10 million creatures emerged from the darkness between stars. They moved in perfect coordination like a single massive organism with 10 million parts. Some were as large as space stations, others were smaller but moved with terrifying speed. All of them radiated hunger. The Alliance fleet, which had seemed so impressive just minutes before, suddenly looked tiny and helpless. 47,000 ships against 10 million creatures. Technology that was thousands of years old against enemies that adapted to everything in real time. Ships began dying by the hundreds. The proud Krathari warships, built to intimidate enemies across the galaxy, were torn apart like toys. Valen. Cruisers with their advanced shields lasted slightly longer before being consumed. Beltosian fighters tried to use their speed and agility, but the Devourers moved faster than anything with engines should be able to move. "This is hopeless," someone screamed over the communications channel. "We can't fight them." "All ships, continue the attack," General Rax 5 ordered, but his voice was starting to crack. "We will not surrender." In the back of the formation, the small group of human ships seemed to be panicking along with everyone else. They fired their simple weapons at distant targets and missed most of their shots. Their basic shields flickered and failed under minor attacks. They looked exactly like what everyone expected from Earth's primitive military, but Janae was watching. Everything through sensors that the Alliance didn't know existed. She was tracking the movement of every Devourer creature and analyzing their attack patterns. She was waiting for exactly the right moment to reveal humanity's true strength. "Admiral," Commander Day 1 reported, "the Alliance has lost 30% of their fleet. Should we begin Phase 2? "Not yet," Janae replied calmly. "Let the enemy commit fully to their attack pattern. We only get one chance at surprise." On the main communications channel, General Rax 5 was trying to reorganize his shattered forces. "All remaining ships, form up on my position. We'll make our final stand here." Less than 30,000 Alliance vessels were still functional. The Devourers were closing in from all sides, moving with the confidence of predators who had already won. Some of the larger creatures had stopped fighting and started feeding, consuming the wreckage of destroyed ships to grow even larger. was exactly what Janae had been waiting for. All Ghost Fleet units, she broadcast on a frequency the Alliance couldn't hear. This is Admiral Janae. Execute Protocol 7, Phase 2, decloak and engage. Around the Nexus system, space itself seemed to ripple and shift. What had looked like empty darkness suddenly filled with ships. Not hundreds of ships? Not thousands. 200,000 vessels materialized out of nothing, surrounding the Devourer fleet like a closing fist. Each ship was larger and more advanced than anything the Alliance had ever built. Their weapons were already charging, their shields were already up, and their targeting systems had already locked onto every enemy creature in the system, the Alliance fleet, which had been preparing for heroic last stands and noble defeats, suddenly found themselves staring at the largest military force in galactic history, and every single ship was human. This is Admiral Janae to all Alliance vessels, she broadcast on the main communications channel. Her voice was no longer that of a simple transport captain. Now she spoke with the authority of someone who commanded fleets that could reshape star systems. Earth requests permission to take point position.